Welcome into this week's edition of the Co-Lin Coaches Show, and joining me right now is head men's and women's soccer coach Tom Cosgrave. Tom, thanks for joining me.
Thank you as always.
And unfortunately, to quote one of my favorite bands, Tom, we've unfortunately come to the end of the road this year for soccer. Both teams fell in the Region 23 quarterfinals. We'll start with the guys. Guys played first, so we'll start with them. Went on the road to Jones, a team that you lost to earlier in the year, 6-0. This game, a lot closer even than what the scoreline says, 4-1. But talk about how you felt about how the guys played.
Yeah, I thought we'd give it a good effort. It was always going to be a difficult place to go, Jones away. We started off pretty slow in terms of the scoreline, and we managed to claw back and give ourselves a chance. But unfortunately, they took their chances and we didn't. And at this level, you've got to make sure that you're clinical and take every opportunity that you can get.
Right, and it was 1-0 and had a shot at tying it there. Alfie has one that goes off the crossbar. We've got photos of it. We'll post a lot of those photos later. But, if you look at the photo, literally maybe like a half an inch lower, and that's in for a goal. You even had a header that, unfortunately, it goes over the net there and those kind of things. And then you're down 2-0, and Alfie then gets you on the board with another free kick, really from a spot that, again, we've loved seeing him take it, and he loves taking it there. And it's 2-1. Talk about the goal and just kind of, it felt like with that goal, you really had a shot at getting back in it.
Yeah, when we got the free kick there, it was right in his range, and he just strikes them so well. They're so difficult to save. They look like they're going about 50 yards over the goal, and at the last second they drop, and it makes the goalkeepers look a little silly. But it's not really anything the goalkeeper can do. It's just his ball movement that he gets. It's phenomenal that he can do. So got us back in the game there at 2-1, and we had a lot more opportunities there. We came out fighting, and we have another 3 or 4 chances that I think we should have scored. And I think if we get that game to 2-2, it's a different story, because we definitely had the momentum and the confidence at that moment. But unfortunately, they came back and got the third goal.
Right, and scored 3 and 4, basically kind of within 3 or 4 minutes of each other, and really kind of sealed it. But another thing to look at, in his final game in a Wolves uniform, your goalie, Leo Summers, once again saved a lot more shots than what he allowed in. He saved 7 of 11 shots on goal. Again, another performance where, a couple of bounces go this way or that way, and things are different. And, Tom, just talk about the season overall. I know a lot of people are going to look at the record and go, maybe what happened, you look at things, and you finished with 5 ties. And all of those ties, if they'd have gone your way, you'd have been right on par basically with where you were last year. And I think in all of those games, except for the scoreless one, at one point or another during those ties, you had the lead. So, it kind of came down to just allowing an unlucky goal here or there throughout the season. But talk about how you feel about the season overall.
Yeah, there was lots of ups and downs in the season, and with any team as well. We're not going to say it's just us that get injuries at the wrong times. Everybody has to go through that and face that adversity. We had a lot of young players coming in this year. A lot of freshmen played a lot of minutes for us. So I think there was a lot of ups and downs in the season where if we could have took care of business in those games in the regular season, then we wouldn't have to play Jones in the quarterfinal. And that was kind of the story of what I told the boys after the game as well. We played really well, but we should never have played Jones in that quarterfinal. We should have made sure that we were a higher seed than what we were anyway. And it's always going to be an uphill task from there. So lots of positives to take away. A lot of freshmen got a lot of good, valuable minutes going into next season. Personally, I feel like with the squad that we had, we probably should have performed a little bit better. But that's part of it. I tell all the boys all the time, soccer's a game of ifs and buts. If only this would have happened, or if we would have done this. But proud of the effort, especially in the final game, given it all they've got against Jones. Nothing to be disappointed there with what they did.
Yeah, I think the general consensus among most of the guys was they felt really good about the effort and how much better they played in a second go at Jones than they did in the first go around. We'll switch over to the girls. The girls fared a little bit worse, played the number 3 team in the nation for the second time in the last couple of weeks. Had to play the Lady Rangers. This time you had to go up there and play them, and unfortunately it was a 7-0 final. But again, I think even the Northwest SID said that final score is not indicative of how good the team was and how well they played throughout most of the match. Talk about the match.
Yeah, we started off really slow. We gave them 2 really easy, sloppy goals in the first 5 minutes, and then 2-0 away from home after a long trip up there is always going to be a massive uphill task for the girls. But then we started to play better. We started to claw our way back into it, and at 2-0, we held them for a long time. Created a couple of opportunities, which I think on a different day we might have, if we would have got one back, it would have made things a little bit different. But one thing that Northwest do really well is just constant pressure for 90 minutes. They don't let you have a second to breathe. And I think in the second half at 2-0, we just got a little tired, and they were just constantly on us with the pressure. And then obviously pressure leads to mistakes and then goals. And then the floodgates opened, unfortunately, there in the second half.
And I think I told one person, I said, we looked up at one point and Northwest took 7 out and replaced it with 7 fresh players. And anytime you're facing a team that can do something like that, it's always going to be an uphill battle. But again, a positive note to end on for Laura Dorfel. She gave up 7 goals, but she still saved 12 shots. She faced 19 shots on goal and saved way more than she allowed in. Just talk about Laura's play throughout the match and throughout the whole season.
Yeah, she's been getting better with every game. That's always the way with incoming freshmen. They always get better. The season's so fast and so quick that it takes a while, especially for internationals, to come over and adjust to it straight away. And I think as the games have gone on, she learned more about our style of playing, what we want from her and what the other teams are doing. She's just been getting better and better every single game and got a lot of valuable minutes this year as a freshman. So we're excited what she's going to do for the future.
And I think, again, people will look at this record and maybe think the team, you don't want to say digressed, but maybe wasn't where you thought they would be. But again, you only finished with 2 ties, games where you had the lead in both of those and kind of let that team, let a late last-minute goal go through, those kind of things, both those ties against Gulf Coast and then against East Central. But again, if you look at the record and you go and look at it, 7 of your losses, we talked about this before, 7 of the losses that you had this year are against nationally ranked opponents, including 4 against teams that were ranked number 1 throughout the whole season, and one of the other teams is in the top 10 right now. So probably, arguably, the toughest schedule in the nation this year. And I think when you look back on it, you have to think that the girls performed and met expectations. You would like some of those games to go your way, and you had opportunities. But overall, how do you feel about the season?
Yeah, I was proud of the girls for their effort. We had a really tough schedule, and we wanted that. We said that last year our schedule was a little bit too easy with the players that we got and the players that we had coming in. We wanted to challenge them a little bit more and prepare them for conference, with obviously our conference being the toughest one in the nation, in my personal opinion. Every game, anyone can beat anyone on each day, so we wanted to prepare them that with tough games at the start of the year as well. And the girls stepped up. They did really well again, similar. Most of our starting 11 this year were freshmen. So, again, it's just valuable minutes and valuable experience for them moving into next year. But we started the season off really strong. We wanted to make sure we won the games that we needed to. And then we had a tough stretch in the middle when we played all those ranked teams. Had a couple of injuries in there as well. And then obviously finished off the season strong, getting into the playoffs. But proud of the girls for their effort, and I'm excited for the incoming class that we've got next year, added to the freshmen that we've got this year, is going to be a nice season for us next year.
And I always like to remind people, when you look at it, you're both teams back-to-back playoff appearances in just the 4th year of this program being back. I think that speaks volumes to, not only the players that you brought in, but the progress this program has made overall on both the men's and women's side.
Yeah, I think that's to do with our culture of what we want to try and get here. We're not just recruiting necessarily the best players, but we're bringing in girls that are good soccer players, but also good people off the field, and they're buying into what culture we want. We want them to be good student athletes and have a sense of togetherness. I actually said that to the girls after the game the other day. I was like, we've been here 4 seasons now, and we've had 0 drama on a team, which is amazing. A lot of other teams struggle with that, and so I think that's just a credit to the players that we bring in and what their personalities are like, and the buying into what we want and what we want Co-Lin to do going forward.
All right. Well, Coach, thanks for joining us all year. It's been a great year for Co-Lin soccer. Again, back-to-back playoff appearances. Girls got ranked all the way. Also need to mention this since we haven't yet, but girls did set a program high in terms of rankings. Got all the way up to 12th this year as well, too. So just the future is very bright for Co-Lin soccer on both the men's and women's side. Again, Coach, thanks for joining us all season. That'll wrap up this portion of this week's Coach's Show. Coming up, we'll talk to head football coach Glenn Davis about the Wolves' overtime homecoming win against the Warriors and a special historic performance from one member of the team. Welcome back in. Thanks for sticking in through the break, and joining me now is head football coach Glenn Davis. Coach, thanks for joining me as always.
Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
And Coach, coming off the thrilling win there for the Wolves, had to take it all the way to overtime against East Central, a very game East Central bunch. I think a lot of people might have been a little bit surprised that East Central was in it as much as they were, but how do you feel about how your guys played in getting the win?
Well, I thought we started slow. I thought we played well offensively as the game went on, and I think East Central gave us fits. Defensively they've done a great job of everybody they've played. It's been close ball games. Gulf Coast beat them by 4. They were up by 14, and they're the only team that really has beaten them solidly has been Jones, and but they've played everybody tough.
And Coach, obviously we'll start like we always do. We'll start with some impact players. And again, Devon Tott, a game where he didn't have a touchdown pass, but I thought he was fairly effective throughout most of the game. 20 of 33 for 176 yards, 4 carries, 40 yards. And it just kind of seemed like every time you needed a big rush or kind of needed a big play, he was able to kind of deliver most of the time. But how do you feel about how your quarterback played?
I thought Devon played well. I mean, the thing about quarterbacks, a lot of times, they want to throw touchdowns. They want to make big plays, and the biggest thing about them is being the distributor. Get the ball to the guys around them to make plays, and let those guys, make them look good. And but I thought he did a good job of that, and we kept them off balance and with running and passing, and like I say, he made a big scramble. So we're pleased with how he played.
Good. Your leading receiver for this one, I thought he made, a very big impact. That was Sean Melton. He had only had 5 receptions for 60 yards, but he made some big receptions, including one really late, kind of extended the drive. I believe it was like on 4th down play, made a diving reception on one and really extended that drive. But talk about how Sean played and how he's able to step up.
Sean's a good player. He plays alongside of a lot of other good players that are in our receiver group, and he's gotten better and better as years went on, and has made a lot of big catches. He made several big plays in the return game Thursday, and so we're glad he's here, and like I say, he's made several plays this season that have really helped us out a lot as a team. I can remember one in the Gulf Coast game. So, he's been an impact player all year. And
probably the biggest impact on the offensive side of the ball was the historic performance out of Johnny Daniels. 13 rushes, 159 yards, 12.2 yards per carry. Biggest thing was 4 touchdowns on the night. I know I talked to you on Friday after I had called you and said, had you ever had a running back score 4 rushing touchdowns? You said never in your time here, and that's two decades worth of coaching experience. But Johnny just played lights out. Was really the spark that you needed the whole night. Talk about his play all night.
He did. Johnny had a phenomenal night, and I think a lot can be said for our offensive line and receivers blocking downfield, because he had 2 or 3 runs that were over 50 yards that you just don't, once you get in the secondary, normally there's a DB somewhere shows up, and those guys weren't around, and he was able to outrun some of those people too. And but I thought there were some really big holes for him to run into, so our offensive line created a bunch of movement.
He also had 2 receptions for 21 yards, finished with 180 all-purpose yards, career highs in rushing yards, touchdowns, AP yards, and the 12.2 yards per carry was his second highest of his career. Defensively, you look at it, you say you gave up 34 points, and some people would say the defense didn't play well. I think the defense played very well. Again, just a very game East Central bunch, and they were able to find some gaps every now and then. But you had 10 tackles for a loss, you had 4 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 3 pass breakups. Just talk about how the unit as a whole played.
I mean, they did, and like I say, the overtime play, and at the end of the game, they played lights out, and that was, we always talk about answering plays of, the opposing team that we play, whether it's a play offensively or a play defensively, and I thought they really answered, after we had tied the game up and got the ball back so we could have an opportunity to try to win it at the end. And that was big.
And your 2 leading tacklers for the night, Caden Dukes, a guy we've talked about all year, just continues to make plays for you. And another one that we hadn't talked about much, but he's statistically been up there in some of your top 5 tacklers for most of the year. Colin McGowan. McGowan also had a tackle for a loss, but both of them had 9 tackles. Talk about the way both of them play, because I know they play in kind of 2 different levels of the defense, but they seem to be 2 of your big playmakers.
They did. They're both guys that have played well all year, and it's. We asked Coach Gordon does a great job with our schemes of our defense. That those guys are guys that we try to make sure they're in place to make plays. And Caden's done well on the edge out there, and Colin's done well coming from inside out. And Billy Pullen's a guy that his stats were awesome too, and that people try to go away from him sometimes, and that's that creates plays for those other guys too.
Billy was the other one we were going to mention. The saying goes, big time players make big time plays in big time situations, and Billy was just big time all game. 6 total tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 1 pass breakup. I'll stop because that's the end of the stat line, but holy smokes, what a stat line!
Yeah, so that's Used to in the old days, coaches would give points for the big play stuff like that. And no telling what his point total would be after this past game, because of all that. But he played well, and there's a few plays that when you have a guy like Billy, you expect him to make every play, and he's made his fair share all year.
And one other one that we do want to talk about Brandon Gillum. Second straight week in a row where he's perfect on scoring opportunities. Went 6 for 6, 4 for 4 extra points, 2 for 2 on field goals, had 28 and 26-yard field goals, and averaged 64 yards across all of his kickoffs and had 4 touchbacks. So just a really solid game out of your kickoff guy. And he also handles your punts as well, too. Was solid in the punting game for you as well.
Yeah, kickoff and extra point field goal, those were really the best things. And Brandon is an extremely hard worker, and he's has really been solid here down the stretch, and that's you really need that from your kicker.
And we'll get into the scoring. And first quarter, just a little bit ugly, like you mentioned earlier, a little bit of a slow start. You got the ball first, really kind of sputtered kind of out of the gate, and then East Central goes down and kind of scores on their opening possession, kind of gets you on your heels. You're down 7-0, and that score kind of holds through the first quarter, even though at the end of it you're kind of driving. What's the message out of the first quarter? You're down 7-0. It kind of feels like, well, we've been here before. We know we can come back. But what's your message to the guys?
Well, a big thing is to wake up. We've got to start faster, and we just hadn't done that the last couple ball games for some reason. But we've got to get back to that this week and get that corrected. And the bottom line is it could have been 14 or 10-0 instead of 7-0. So felt like we were fairly lucky from that standpoint, and just get woke up and let's get going.
And the good news is, as we were saying at the end of the first quarter, going into the second, you're on a drive there, and that drive was finally capped off. Devon scampered in from 17 yards out. I think he finally saw the hole and just realized, I've got all this green grass in front of me. I'm just going to take it. And he just kept going until he found the end zone. That ended a 9-play, 78-yard drive. You're tied 7-7 with 13:21 left in the second quarter. So still a lot of time left, and you've got to feel good where you're at now, knowing, hey, we tied the game. Now let's go take the lead.
We did. We felt better there. Once you get going and you get points on the board, and like I say, Devon made a good read on a short yardage play, and they had 2 guys that were tackling the dive, and he pulled it and like I say, scored.
And then unfortunately, East Central did regain the lead, scored I think on that next possession, had a 14-7 lead with about 10 minutes left. Guys did respond late in the second quarter. Brandon scores on one of his two field goals. A 26-yard field goal ended an 11-play, 42-yard drive. It's 14-10 with 2:26 left, and that ends up being the score at halftime. You go into the locker room at halftime, you're down 14-10. It's homecoming, but you still feel pretty okay with it, knowing that you had a chance, you could have tied it, you just couldn't get a couple of things to go together there. What's the message to the guys at halftime?
Well, we got to get going, and that's the thing. There's 2 weeks in a row that we've kind of been in that same deal, and the thing that I think they knew is that we had missed some opportunities, and then just weren't performing at the skill set that we should be performing at, and we made that challenge to them. So guys, you put yourself in a position to get in the playoffs. You got to get going. And they responded, I thought.
And then you come out in the third quarter, and East Central gets the opening possession, and they go out and score again. And you're now in a position you haven't been in very many times this year. I think the only other time that really comes to mind is in the Jones game. You're down 2 scores. It's 21-10 with 12:35 left. And then pretty much the very next play, the next possession, it's kind of like the switch was finally flipped on, and partly because Johnny found a hole, hit it. 64 yards later, he's in the end zone. Talk about that play.
Yeah, it was an outside zone play that we're going to run a lot of in this game, and then like I say, those guys up front created a big hole, and Johnny got into the secondary, and once he gets there, he's kind of hard to catch.
Yeah, if you go and watch the highlight, I think you can see him. He gets to that next level real quick, and then everybody on East Central is going, we're not going to get him. So it's 20-17 with 12:21 left. And it's just kind of a battle throughout most of the rest of the third quarter. Their offense couldn't get a lot going because our defense was playing so well. Our offense couldn't get anything going. Missed some connections, those kind of things. Their defense also answered the bell. But you do tie the game. Brandon Gillum, again, a 28-yard field goal this time. That was his longest of the game, capped off a 5-play, 24-yard drive, and you're tied with 2:37 left, and you're thinking, okay, maybe we'll go to the fourth quarter tied, but then you get the ball back late in the third quarter, and it's a 3-play, 52-yard drive. Both of them rushes. You had a 10-yard rush from Devon, and then 2 plays later, kind of looked like the play to the opposite side of the field. Johnny, again, gets a big hole. 42 yards later, he's in the end zone. Talk about the play.
It was the exact same play that we ran to the left, and same thing. It was good blocking. He was able to get underneath the tackle and then get back outside and was able to do the same thing, outrun their secondary.
So Gillum is good on that PAT, and you've got a 27-20 lead with 22 seconds left. So you're going into the fourth quarter, you've got the lead, you're feeling like maybe this is the time when we finally start pulling away. But again, East Central was ready for it. They answered the bell every time, it seemed like, until kind of the end of the game. They scored on back-to-back possessions in the fourth quarter, and you're facing a 34-27 hole once you get the ball back. But again, you just find a way to respond. I think this was probably the biggest drive of the whole game. I know it was the longest drive. You took 6 minutes and 23 seconds off, and ultimately Johnny scores his third touchdown. This one, his shortest of the night, just a 5-yard rush, but ended a 12-play, 75-yard drive. Again, I think this was the drive we talked about. Sean Melton having the big fourth down reception. Just talk about that drive and just how key it was to be able to ignite the comeback.
Well, the big thing we were trying to do is, we had to score points. We had been down by 11, up by 7, down by 7 again. And, I think, a lot about the resiliency of the football team and the guys who keep playing. And, we're trying to keep our defense off the field a little bit, let them get a break, and at the same time having to score points. And, it was a drive where we were trying to, eat up as much clock as we possibly could. And, we were able to do that. And like I say, the 12-play drive, normally – plays of that length, you have to battle through penalties, and we had some of that in there, and they were able to battle through that too. So, it was a really great drive, and Devon kept plugging along, hitting receivers and the guys' backs making runs and that kind of stuff.
And there's not a lot of time left. EC gets the ball back, and you're really kind of hoping the defense will kind of stand up and give you one of those big kind of game-defining possessions, and they really did. They held East Central to negative yardage on that. You get the ball back, and you get down there, you're driving. Devon has to come out for a play. You got to bring Will in. Will hits Johnny on a little 18-yard catch and run, and there's about 2 seconds left on the clock. And the team, you try to run out there, hit them with the TCU field goal play, and unfortunately the clock. They said the clock expired before we got the kickoff. So you go into overtime tied at 34-34. What's the message to the team going into overtime? Something that you haven't had to do in the last couple of years. I think, ironically, the last overtime game was against East Central at their place 2 years ago.
Yeah. That last drive, you kind of talking about that a little bit, is that, we were trying to get down, and I actually thought he was going to score, and because we had talked about, got to get down, clock play, all those kind of things, and we just ran out of time and didn't give ourselves enough chance. We used all our timeouts to get the ball back, and then, like I said, we get to overtime, and we want to let our defense go out first and kind of see what they did. And our defense did a great job of holding them, and then it was up to the offense to score points.
Defense again stepped up big, as you mentioned. Also held them to negative yards. Right. I think if anybody goes and looks at the drive summary, the box score, anything, I think the thing that stand out the most is, this was a game where, again, when you needed your defense the most, they came through. In the last couple of possessions by East Central held them to negative yardage there. So you get the ball back, and I don't think there was any doubt in anybody's mind who was going to touch the ball most. It was going to be Johnny Daniels, and almost didn't need 2 plays. First one is a little 19-yard rush. He gets out to the end, and I think he stepped out just by the sliver of his cleat. They call him out, but then you turn around, 6-yard rush. Johnny calls ball game and scores there. But talk about the play and talk about how it felt to get that huge win in homecoming.
Oh, it was big. I mean, anytime you have a lot of folks back on campus for homecoming, and you want to make sure your homecoming goes down with a win. And really proud, like I say, proud of our kids, how they played, and how hard and how much they battled to stay in the game, because they could have very well done the same thing as that we were hoping that Northeast would do, hang their head, and they didn't, and they just kept battling to the end.
And we've talked about a little bit about, but just again, the performance. I don't think you can overstate the performance of Johnny enough. 4 touchdowns is just unheard of at this league. You don't see many of that happen. You know, I went and looked up some stats. He's now leading the conference in just about every rushing category. He's second in the nation in a lot of those as well too. So Johnny's been very special. I know we talked at the beginning of the year how you wanted to try to keep him healthy, and I think you've done a great job of that. And now you're really starting to reap the rewards of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, him being healthy is has a lot to do with our record, and we've been fortunate to have the other backs that have been able to give him a blow, and there's not been a drop off. And Trey Minor early in the year, we've got Sharman back now, and I think that those three are very capable of going out there and helping us win a football game.
So another valiant performance from the Wolves. You closed out the regular season with a perfect record, 5-0 at home. Finish up the regular season. We'll be at Hines on Thursday, and you really just have your postseason destiny in your own hands. Going into this one, the message is simple. Hey, guys, win and you're in. Right. Doesn't matter what happens in the other games. We know one thing. If we take care of our business, we win and we're in. But what are you expecting out of this bunch out of Hines?
Well, I mean, Coach Williams done a great job. I mean, they have battled all year long too, and they're going into last week's game. They were kind of in the tiebreaker talk and mix, and losing to Gulf Coast was kind of pretty much, I think, knocked them out of it, but they've played really well, and they've gotten better and better each ball game. We scrimmaged them this summer, so they're not the same team that we scrimmaged. They held some guys out from that, so we didn't get to see in that scrimmage, and we've got to go, like you say, handle our own business, and if we win, we're either first or second if we win. So then it comes down to the game. It'll end later on Thursday with Jones and Gulf Coast.
So Wolves fans we'll keep an eye on both of those. Obviously, we'll always give you all the updates about the Wolves football first, but we'll keep our eye and pulse on the Jones Gulf Coast game as well too, as that'll determine where we'll finish the year with the win as well too, hopefully. So that'll wrap up this week. Again, Wolves will be on the road on Thursday at Hines. We hope to see everybody there, but if not, we'll always have the stream for you as well too. We'll give you all those links on social media throughout the end of the week as well too. I'm Kevin Kaiser, Sports Information Coordinator here at Co-Lin. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week.